Oh, I need to do gallery view.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
No, well, it should already be.
Okay, we are going. Go.
What's going on, everyone? It's Juan from On Point Discussion on this Wednesday night, April 14th, 2021. Happy hump day, everyone. Happy Wednesday, middle of the work week. We are here tonight live exclusively on the Lounge Room Network, powered by our friends at One Call Technology. Remember to give them a call at 1-888-585-8850. Tell them that On Point Discussion sent you, and they will give you a good and honest rate. Julius, Wyatt at the fifth top, at the Cornelius 7, respectively. And we have Joa tonight, who is joining us from the great state of Illinois, somewhat socialist state of Illinois. Joa, thanks for coming on tonight. We're gonna have a good conversation, a good civil, lively conversation about some Marxist thought, something that we have never done on the show actually as a group. I know him and I have had conversations, at a one-on-one basis, but it'll be good to incorporate the thoughts of kind of everyone to see where we can get in this very productive, hopefully, conversation here in the second half of the show. But I want to start off by just asking you guys, of course, how's everyone doing? How's everyone holding up? Middle of the work week. Julius, how are you?
Not bad, my friend. Not bad. I'm starting to lose track of time again. This usually happens around spring. Things ramp up, get so busy. But yeah, not too bad. Not too bad.
I see you're trying a new mic out. I like that. I like the little lights at the kind of that are looking here towards the camera lens. I like looking at those. Those are my ADD is going to be staring at those a lot throughout the show. But Wyatt, how are you doing, sir?
Doing good, sir. Staying busy. I was on a Zoom meeting this morning for work because on Wednesdays we work from home. And so when I logged in, it said the Lounge Network. And I was like trying to rename it to my name, but I wasn't the host, so it wasn't letting me. So like the guy that was running the Zoom, he's like, okay, Lounge Network, what do you think? So we got some free propaganda or ads or whatever you want to call it.
Why it's already in that Marxist kind of socialist thought process, the propaganda, no, it's some free advertising for the Lounge Room Network. That's fantastic. And last but not least, the man of the hour, our special guest tonight, Joa. What's going on, dude? It's nice to see you again. Happy Wednesday. What's up?
Yeah, I'm doing well. It's been a year, but it doesn't feel like it's been a year since I've been on. I think the last time we did a podcast together, I was coming from my dorm room. So, I moved up in the world. I'm living in an apartment now. I'm old. I'm 20, It is what it is. But yeah, I'm enjoying life, or trying to. Yeah, I hope everything is well with you guys. It's nice to meet you, Wyatt and Julius. And I'm excited to talk about what we're going to talk about tonight.
I have been looking up to this conversation, this episode all day today, because obviously I'm a political nerd. I mean, that's literally what I did for my entire postgraduate career, post high school career. And this conversation of Marxism is just so intriguing to me because there's so many different avenues to look at it from. But here in the United States, of course, anything even remotely related to that side of the aisle is almost exclusively and immediately frowned upon. But we will get to that later in the second half of the show. But first, let's start with talking some of the big news points here of the week. Of course, everything from, I know we had some vaccine issues with Johnson and Johnson, to now Biden and his third month of his presidency, a little bit over 3 months now that he's been in office. I see Joe is already shaking his head, and there's going to be good reason for that. And I think Joe, he'll explain to us in a little bit here, but let's do some reflecting, gentlemen. We are now again, a little bit over roughly 3 months into the Biden presidency. If we were to give him a letter grade, and we can go around and just kind of and do this, and then explain our rationale behind that. If we were to give him a letter grade, A being obviously that he's doing absolutely fantastic, everything's beautiful, F being that he needs to get out of office right now, where would we place Biden at this moment? I will start, Julius. I will start with you because you're always very antsy to get your answer out there. So go ahead.
I think when I think about that question, a letter grade. Okay, a letter grade. There's nothing I'm gonna give him above a D off the rip. Based on the border and gas prices alone. D already. Now, I'm not even gonna get into him not doing no press conferences or not answering questions that's not pre-prepared for him to answer. I'm not going to get into pretty much Kamala Harris is the president. I'm not going to get into that. Sleepy Joe, I'm not even going to call him no names. D-.
Even though you stuck in a Sleepy Joe in there, but that's cool. Okay, no, that's fine. We can come back.
I'm being
to
fair with that D-.
Wyatt, letter grade and a short explanation as to why.
I would say D. That was the first thing that came on the top of my head. D. Just there's a lot of things going on in the country. He's doing a lot of executive orders and saying that he's going to do executive orders if Congress doesn't agree with him on some issues, and then he comes out with saying that no amendment is absolute, and I'm just like shaking my head like, okay, well, Amendment 16, paying federal taxes to the government, that's not absolute, so I'm not going to pay that anymore. So I don't know. It's a D. I would give him a 0, but that would be unreasonable. So I'll just say D.
Okay. All right. Joa, I know you were highly critical before the start of the show, but I'm curious now. Now that we're on the record, of course. Go ahead.
So when people, especially centrists, talk about horseshoe theory and how the far left is the same as the far right, which I usually disagree with. But in this instance, I'm giving Biden an F. I'm so sorry. I think he's a terrible president. I think that he has not canceled student debt. He has not given people healthcare when they've needed healthcare. He is going to continue to build the wall. I don't know where y'all stand on that, but regardless of whether you support it or don't support it, the campaign promises that he promised he's not going to do that. The concentration camps and at the border also are terrible to me. Him talking about maybe the Second Amendment stuff, like I completely disagree with that. I think that, I'm just like, everything he does, it's just a new low. Every day I see something that's a new low for me. And to Julius's point about the press conference stuff, yeah, that was I was assuming that was going to happen from the beginning. I was like, there's no way that this dude can walk out on a stage and answer questions. He does not have the presence that, the previous president had. So there's no way he can do that. I don't even think he has the confidence to do that. But he's the architect of a lot of racial oppression in this country, and so everything I just see, like all these the new wave of protests right now, like that goes back to Joe Biden era 1994 policies that really have just harmed so many people, and it just makes me so dismayed. I'm sorry, I'm talking for too long, but I'm gonna give him an F, lower than both of y'all. I don't know.
That was no, I completely agree, and I know one of the things that we were discussing, Joe, before the show is we were kind of comparing some of those, some of the good moments that the former administration had, some of the bad moments. Obviously, there were a lot of them, unfortunately, but I think that one of the things that then President Trump could do was that he could go out there and put a scene, right, or put a show on for the cameras. Obviously, not in the best way, but it was still it was entertaining. Okay, that's what I'm trying to say. It was just entertainment, and obviously with Biden, that is
it
not
was
the case.
scary.
It was, but there were a lot of things that he would say, and I'd be like, oh my god, like. just bust out laughing. But um, Biden has not held on to any of his campaign promises. Okay. To my knowledge, a lot of people, got played in what's happened in the past, just in these short 3 months, right? You're starting to see a lot of those campaign promises get broken. So I always want to give the incoming president the opportunity to demonstrate, what they're about. Let get a feel for who's in office, see what it's all about. I've done it, since W. Bush, since when I could start kind of understanding what was happening in the world and whatnot. So I'm still feeling, President Biden out, just trying to see what he's all about. I'd give him a C minus, in my opinion. And I know I'm probably being generous, and I'm playing the devil's advocate. But
You're always generous, Juan. You're always
I
generous.
know I'm a nice.
You're
I'm
a very
person.
nice guy.
I'm a nice person.
Except when it
Julius.
comes to the Lions.
Yeah, the Lions
You're-
are trash.
Yeah,
But
see? It's not good
the a C minus. Now I want to dig into this a little bit more, and you can comment on this, Joe. What have been some of your? I know you mentioned obviously the campaign promises that have been broken, but what are some other things that I guess are bothering you with what the president is doing at this time?
So a lot of what bothers me boils down to the just everything. It's kind of weird for me to say that, considering like I'm probably gonna agree with y'all on some things that it feels weird because like this is not like something that you might expect from someone who is on the left. But yeah, like just the fact that like Kamala Harris came in to the race when she started her presidential campaign. She came in and was for Medicare for all, for socialized healthcare, and then has now completely abandoned that. The lack of anything being done about the prison and industrial complex, lack of anything being done about the private prisons, lack of anything being done about marijuana being federally legalized, the lack of healthcare, obviously, Second Amendment stuff. It's just like very, very like disappointing. And as someone who reluctantly voted for Biden out of pure reluctance, and I was gonna vote Green Party, but then didn't and voted for Biden because I just was like, it's probably the best thing I can do right now. And I don't feel played because I knew this was going to happen. But I expected it to be a little better. Like I expected to get some things. Like there's that famous JFK quote that I think is really, really important right now. It's like, ask not, I don't know exactly what it is, but it's like, ask not what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country, or do something like that. Like something like that.
Something to that extent. Yeah.
I think that this current Keynesian economic field administration has just completely embodied that. And the past one as well, and then the one before that as well, the one before that as well, and the one before that as well, and all of the ones since Reagan and before that as well. I've said as well like 6 times, but they just completely embody this, like, you have to do stuff for your country. Your country is not going to be able to provide for you when you increase the military budget to $753 billion.
My biggest issue thus far has been that that President Biden hasn't really spoken, at least based on what I've heard thus far, about doing or working on immigration reform policies. I wish that would have been something that he would have discussed at more length, at least at this point, by this point in this, in the first 100 days. But again, I understand that there's a lot of other things that are also happening right now with, a lot of these unfortunate, shootings that are plaguing the country, and the officer involved shootings that are happening in Minnesota, and the border crisis, of course, is not helping either. So I don't know, it's that's another reason why I'm trying not to be too harsh on him, but at the same time realizing that this, I'm sure that a lot of these things could get multitasked and not put up, on the shelf somewhere, and just kind of left up there, to get, gain dust and die out. But Julius or Wyatt, any of you have additional comments?
No, not really. It's very interesting to hear Joe's point of view coming from the political scale he comes from, and his reluctancy to vote for Biden. You know how many people, just like Joe, reluctantly voted for Joe Biden? They didn't vote for him because they wanted to, because they thought he was they didn't vote for him because they thought that he was far and away superior or was going to change our country for the better. They voted for him because he was the alternative to the other guy. And so we're about to see how that type of mass reluctance plays out in our country the next few years. But it's very interesting, very interesting.
Final thoughts on this one, Wyatt?
No, I agree with what some of the things that Joe has said. I mean, if we get into like the healthcare for all and all that stuff, there's, some give and take with that, or paying off student debt. I mean, those are things that people want, but there's always some trade-off if younger generation wants that stuff. And if we get into that, I'll get into that. But I mean, the man has been he's been a politician for what, 48 years, and people think, oh, I'm going to vote him in and things are going to change. Now I know that everyone's saying, well, he's the lesser of two evil. You got Donald Trump, and then you got him. So unfortunately, I just feel like our system's broken. Like, we definitely need another party that's going to challenge the Republicans and Democrats, because what we have in office now, not every Republican in office, like there are some good senators and there are some good representatives in the House, but there are some good Democrats as well, and Republicans that advocate for the American people, but they're far and few between. So I feel like our system's broken, and it's, there's a lot to go into. You can talk about, the social media and how they're, pushing the far left agenda, and they want to, stay relevant and, stay, have as much power and money. And so it's just, there's so much in this nation. But one thing you can kind of still hang your hats on is we have a lot of freedoms in this country, and we're blessed to live in this country, and we have a lot of things that a lot of countries don't have. So, I mean, there is some things that are going on in our nation. You see it in, videos, cops shooting people, or, racial things going on with videos being put up on social media. I mean, there's a lot we need to do, but I mean, overall, our country is we're very blessed to live in a free country like we do.
So yeah, I know you mentioned I just in that those few sentences you were just listing out, Wyatt, that you wanted to maybe get into some of the healthcare, the healthcare issue here, and we can certainly dive into that, right? So a new healthcare bill was proposed by the Biden administration. And I believe this ties in with some of the infrastructure stuff that they're trying to get done as well at the national level. But basically, a lot of analysts are calling this, basically, it's Affordable Care Act 2.0. So under this new plan that's being proposed, right? So you would obviously start getting some of that Medicare-like public insurance, people can buy into, and obviously it would be able, Americans would be able to choose whether or not they want to keep their own private insurance, or if they want to get into this public option, right? The government funded option that would readily be available for those who maybe have a lower income or who just can't afford, a private insurer. The other big thing here, and this is one of the more important aspects of this bill, is that undocumented immigrants would be able to buy into it as well. Now, what does this show? Right. Well, number one, I think the most important thing that it shows is this maybe a sign, or is it a sign in definitive that this just kind of shows how far how far to the left the party of the left, the Democrats have come in the past 20, 25, 30 years now, with allowing undocumented immigrants who at one point were probably not even eligible for a program like this, to now be allowed to get Medicare for all, or to be able to buy into this option, this government funded option for healthcare. And I know, Joa, you're a big proponent of Medicare for all, if I'm not mistaken, right? I need your thoughts here. I was under the impression that you were, but I need to know for sure.
So y'all gonna get mad at me. So just give me some leeway here with this one. I'm a big proponent of free utilities, and when I say utilities, I mean free healthcare, free electricity, free internet, free food, free water, just like completely nationalizing those industries, because the privatization of these industries leaves people completely destroyed, excuse me. And I wanted to go back to something Wyatt said real quickly, about how like we live in a free country, and like we have a lot of freedoms that we can't take for granted. And I admire that attitude. I just don't see it. I really think that like some people may be privileged to have that attitude. I'm not saying that you're blind to certain things, but I think that there are a lot of people in this country, including undocumented people, who don't have those freedoms. And the question is should they have those freedoms, considering the United States is the only reason that those people are coming to the United States in the first place, because of U.S. intervention in Central America, and places like Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua. All of these countries have had United States intervention, and it goes back to 1980s and even before that. So I really think that a lot of people don't really see that a lot of people don't have access to the same freedoms that they might have, in the same, like I'm sure if someone who is marginalized and who is oppressed, wanted to have the same freedoms that you would have right now. I really don't like identity politics. I feel like it divides people, but you have white skin, Wyatt. So, someone who is marginalized, someone who is oppressed, I'm sure would love to have the same, freedoms that you have as a white man in the United States. I mean, like that. I hate going that direction, but it's a qualified direction, because I feel like there's a lot of ways to come at this issue, and it's just so much more broad than just like, yeah, Joe, do you support Medicare for all? Do you support like this healthcare bill? Like on one end, I can say, no, I really disagree with this healthcare bill. I think it's stupid that Americans should have to pay for healthcare that's going to be privatized anyway by these massive pharmaceutical companies that are barely taxed. And then they make all the money off of that while you pay for it. And the government, doesn't, get anything to help other industries and help other things. And so, yeah, I very much disagree with that. But do I think that it's a step in the right direction? Barely. Just because the fact that undocumented people have the option to buy into the healthcare, I think that that's good in theory. I really, really, really think that it's really hard for me to come around on that, because the only reason these undocumented people are here is because of the United States intervention. So if I have one thing to say, that's it. It's a lot of things to say, but
It's like you wanted to throw in some Latin American history in there, tied in with the some current state of politics analysis, and no, it's a good, that's an interesting way to look at it, because you're absolutely correct. So, and again, I don't want to dive too much into the history. I don't want this to turn into a history lecture, but the the United States did a lot of bad things in Latin America, throughout the latter part of the 20th century. I mean, they did earlier as well, but you started to see a lot of the militarizing, uh, things that were happening in Latin America as a result of the United States and all of their interventions, and a lot of CIA operations that were let out, a lot of coups that were left out. I mean, that were taking place in these countries was because of the United States and the actions of the free capitalist world. I mean, uh, there's so many layers to this conversation, and I completely agree that an in-depth analytical answer like that one is really the only way you can even begin to answer some of these questions that, yes, may seem a little broad and not very in-depth and detailed. So I
it's just divisive. It's so divisive because like I can see Julia's smiling. He's like, this kid doesn't really get it. He's talking out of his
No,
ass.
bro.
Like,
No, I'm not. I actually, you make some pretty good points. It was very interesting to hear that point of view. You don't get that all the time. But
yeah,
real quick, you talk about identity. You talk about Wyatt's comments on freedom, right? And the privilege he might have to think that way.
yeah,
But I tend to believe in the 21st century, we've reached a point where it's okay if you're a young black kid to think that way about your opportunity that this country gives you in this day and age. Of course, the history of our country does show systemic um, oppression per se, especially on the black community. But
yeah.
I just don't think it's like that anymore, and I think that it's free for anybody to think that way. And another
I
thing
agree. I
with the
agree.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I agree. Like, of course, anyone in this country has the right to think that way. That's guaranteed by the First Amendment, right? But in actuality, like, can someone think with can someone think and then act on that? Because you can think however you want. It's about the actions you take after you make those thoughts.
And the
So,
communities that a lot of
yeah.
those people live in that we're really talking about, like the poor communities of color and inner big cities,
Yeah.
it sometimes it's hard. I can definitely see your point on why sometimes it would be hard in that type of environment to see otherwise. But another thing on your point about Central America in the 80s, this pretty much is the episode in a nutshell. It's the capitalist world, which was America, Great Britain, against the communistic socialist world that was starting to spread during that time in Central America, and the U.S. was trying to stop it with the CIA and military tactics that backfired more times than one. So that was also a great point. It was very interesting to hear that, even if we do disagree on quite a few points.
Yeah, and that's why I said I hate going into identity politics, because it really hurts the universality of my argument. Like, I think that everybody should have the same. I believe in egalitarianism. Like, that's such a massive, nasty term, right? I believe that everybody should have the same access to things that I have. I'm a bourgeois white American from a wealthy city, and so like I want everybody to have the same access to things I have. I don't want anybody to feel oppressed just because of their financial and economic circumstances. And that's why I don't like going into identity politics, because it brings up these issues of like, is there actually systemic oppression? And I think there is. And like, if that's something that you don't think there is, that's perfectly fine. I'm sure we'll have a debate on that at some point, but you know, I feel like I can recognize it. And there's a lot of elitism coming from a lot of people who believe in the same things I do, because they come at it like, you know, like, because I believe these things and because I know these things, I'm better than you. And I really hate that. And the last time I came on, I came on with an open mind. I talked to Juan. I was like, I'm on here with an open mind, and I want you to be on here with an open mind. And that's like, that's my main thing, is I'm coming on here because I think that, like, I'm not going to say I'm better than you because I believe this way. Like, as much as I might like to think that I'm better than you, like, dude, we're just two human beings who happen to believe some radically stupid things.
Right, man. It's the difference between thinking you're better than me and thinking you're right. Okay, because
yeah,
there's a big difference. I might think I'm right about my ideas, but I don't think any less of the person who differs. So I definitely understand where you're going.
Yeah. And that just means that we're just going to have a mature and crafted conversation about genuine issues that we both can probably see affect people in this country, regardless of like the solution, regardless of our potential solutions to those issues that we both can see. You know, we're going to be able to find a way to have a mature and crafted conversation on it, instead of just, you know, something stupid.
So basically, what I tried to mean by that is like everyone has a lot of opportunities in the United States. Now, granted, some people aren't, depending if they come from a poor neighborhood or not so structured family. But you see this as an educator. You see this where you have kids that are middle class or well off. They have more opportunities than kids that come to you that are poor, or their family structure isn't good for them.
Yeah.
And a lot of the thing is like the education, as far as like not just like going to school and get educated, but just like the community they live in, and they feel like there's no way out, especially if they live in a poor or a ravaged neighborhood where there's violence or drugs. And it's unfortunate. And what we need more of is, and I've always talked about this, is, you know, these poor neighborhoods or these neighborhoods where, you know, there's drugs or crimes, there needs to be something done here, because everyone has these opportunities. Like even the poorest of the poor could go to high school or go to college through financial aid from the government, and, you know, become something. So I feel like there's like a lot of opportunity for people, but unfortunately, a lot of people don't know how to climb out of that hole, whether it's a family structure or whether it's kid in that family structure. And unfortunately, these communities that are poor neighborhoods or filled with violence, they don't know how to get out of it. They feel trapped. So they become part of that. You know, they become, there's violence, there's drugs, they become part of it. And unfortunately, it's sad because you see this in certain neighborhoods. So I guess that's what I was trying to mean, is like there is opportunity for everybody. And I know I try not to bring up the race thing, because I mean, I know that I'm a white male in America. I still try to treat people, you know, equally. It doesn't matter what their race is, basically how they are as their character. So, I mean, there's nothing, I mean, unfortunately, it sucks that, you know, sometimes my opportunities might be better than somebody of another color. I don't like that as much as that. I want everyone to have equal opportunity, but unfortunately that doesn't happen. And I can't, like, you can't, the way you were born, white, black, Asian, you know, Hispanic, Mexican, whatever. I mean, you can't help that. That's the way you were born. But unfortunately, there are some stigmatisms in our country and in the world based upon how you look. And it sucks. I mean, that's the way it's going to be, because we have people that, you know, in their own minds, in their society, there's racism, there's bias, and all this other stuff. So
let me just
that's
say,
what I was trying to say by that.
Let me just say real quick,
Yeah,
Wyatt is the only African American on the show. Okay. I'm like, racism racism in the sense that you guys talk about it as it doesn't really affect us the way you think it does. Now, what could fix, like, this is where me and Joe would differ again on what could fix this. What could fix the problem of this? Not having the opportunity, some, people of color, poor neighborhoods, not having the same opportunities as somebody else. It comes down to money. Comes down to money. And I've been talking about this on Twitter a lot. I've been getting into it a lot with people on Twitter. This is one of the reasons I consider myself a conservative per se. It's because I agree a lot with the capitalistic financial ways of the institutions, except, of course, when it comes to like places where I'm from in like the east side of Detroit, that looks like it's not even supposed to be a part of America, and the people there are suffering. How do you fix that? There's only been one president who truly even took a step forward and trying to fix that with the solution I made, which was with money, and that was Donald J. Trump. And he had a $500 billion platinum plan on deck for us. Opportunity zones, mental health institutions, corporations, small business support. It was all in the plan. Lil Wayne was with it. Ice Cube was with it. I was with it. That should be enough. But nope, it wasn't. We need money in those places, my friends. We need money in those places. Opportunities will grow. That's just all I'm gonna say on that.
Hang on. I already know that Joe was gonna come back with the clapback. I already know. But before you do that, save your energy up. We're about 15 minutes past top of the hour here. It's 7:15 here in Milwaukee, 8:15 out on the East Coast. Julius, for those who are watching us live, Julius has our weekly news points here, powered by our friends over at One Call Tech. Remember to give them a call at 1-888-585-8850, or to visit them at onecalltech.com. With over 100 years of experience, they know what they're doing. So, Julius, we need our news points for the week, and then Joe, I will throw it to you so you can do your rebuttal. What's going on in the world, Julius?
We're live on OPD Wednesday, April 14th. Talking points for today. I have 3. Bernie Madoff, the disgraced former financier who ran the largest Ponzi scheme in world history, has died. Multiple sources close to his family has confirmed. He was 82 years old. He died of natural causes while being locked up at the Federal Medical Center in Butner, North Carolina. I think it was nearly $65 billion that he stole. Now, just like I'm all for the capitalistic money side of our country, this is something that would fight hard against my argument in that regard, because this guy got over on a lot of people and he ruined a lot of people's lives. It's notable that he died, though. He died in prison, as he should. But he ruined a lot of people's lives, guys. A lot of people's lives. Our next talking point is about Matt Gaetz, who is wrapped up in a lot right now. The Justice Department is investigating whether Gaetz may have violated sex trafficking laws by paying the travel expenses for a 17-year-old female. He hasn't been charged with any crimes, and he has denied the accusations and denied wrongdoing. Either way, he's being investigated, and of course, Democrats are calling for his canceling. I don't think we have anything to say much about that. It's just another crazy congressional. They're trying to really kill each other on both sides of those aisles, man. I'm telling you, it's nasty. It's nasty. And cancel culture, of course, as we know, is nasty. If he really did what he did, though, hey, you got to pay the consequences. I don't care who you are. I don't particularly like Matt Gaetz. He's just like one of Trump's henchmen in my mind, but people in Florida like him, so whatever. Last talking point. State of Illinois, where a couple of you guys hail from. The Illinois House passed a bill mandating Asian American history in schools from the freshman year of high school to the senior year of high school, even a little bit mixed in middle school. And this is the first of its kind in America. There has been quite a few states that have mandated African American history, the right African American history, to be taught in schools starting as low as the third grade. But Illinois becomes the first state to mandate that Asian American history, which goes back really as far back as American history goes back, because the Chinese and the Japanese were some of the first immigrants to the west coast of mainland America back in the early 1800s and the early 19th century. So that's very interesting that they passed that. Diversity needs to be taught in schools. I'm not against that. I'm not against that at all. But I just wanted to put that in talking point of note. Thank you, Juan. Back to you, man.
Yeah, I actually, now that I'm looking back to some of my, obviously this, given this is almost 20 years ago now, right? But like middle school, and I don't recall ever really learning about Asian history. It was usually always, American history, of course, and sprinkle in some Latin America just because they're right next to us, and that was kind of the end of it. Obviously, African American history with, civil rights history, Civil War, slavery, and whatnot. But you don't really get a lot about, mainland China, Japan, all that, Vietnam War, because we were obviously involved in the Vietnam War, but in North Korea, I mean, and the Korean War. But like culture wise, like learning about their culture and kind of what they're all about, or whether that's not something that's really uh, focused on per se in curriculum. Go ahead.
We actually teach sixth grade social studies. Well, it varies from state to state, but actually probably not now, but you learn about the Chinese dynasties, you learn about their culture, how it was upbringing. You learn about other types of some cultures, not deep dive, because you can't really do that in the middle school area. When you get to college, you can really learn some things you don't learn in your history books in grade school. But yeah, they do teach it now, but like you said, they don't teach too much about the culture. They kind of touch on it, but there's so much you got to deep dive into in
Like
grade
the
school now.
internment camps of World War II that they put Japanese Americans in, I believe to the tune of 100,000, barely talked about in schools. And also
Yeah.
the 49ers of California Gold Rush. This is like half Chinese. They were persecuted as well. And they're talking about things they didn't used to want to talk about. So that's what this is pretty much coming down to. Okay. I have no problem with them teaching that kind of stuff to high school kids. Some stuff they should probably know.
The problem with them trying to do the social studies early age in elementary, the problem with that now is they put so much emphasis on kids with language arts and math. Like you have to devote so much time to that each day as a teacher that you have very little time for social studies, maybe about 30 minutes, maybe an hour, and it's not even every day. So that's the problem with that. And again, it varies from state to state, but that's what they put countrywide, is more emphasis on language arts and reading and less on social studies, physical education, all that stuff. So
Well, that's because no one writes anymore. Like literally, I mean, if you actually sit down and think about it, no one writes. I mean, it's all either typed out or on your phone you do it. I mean, it's all very, very slow. I mean, excuse me, not slow, but all very electrical and whatnot. So Joe, were you gonna make a point? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was. I was gonna talk about how this is very good because, like, yeah, I'm a history major where I go to school, so I try to get I try to get like a well-rounded knowledge of history. And one thing I've noticed in my particular institution is that in the upper level courses, there's a lot of emphasis more on American and European history. And instead of there being an emphasis on histories that are more emphasized in the 100 and 200 levels, which is like, introductory courses that are surveys. And this is where I have a problem with this is because I think it's great that this is being taught to our students. It will make sure that they get a more well-rounded knowledge of Asian American history, especially in the context of American history. But it doesn't really address the issue of bias in the education system, because the history I learned growing up, and relatively recently, to compare it to you guys, not saying that you're old or anything, but like the history I learned, like we learned that Martin Luther King was good and Malcolm X was bad. Like that's what we learned, like because of very, we didn't learn nuance. And I just hope that there's nuance in this education, and that's something that can be explored. Juan, would you like me now to go back to what Julius was talking about before the news wheel?
Yeah, so for those in the live stream, yes, we're going to return back to the conversation we were having before we went to the little news segment. So yes, Joe, your rebuttal for that, please, for the audience, because I'm very interested to hear what you got to say.
It's not as much a rebuttal as it is look, I understand, but when I personally look at it, money isn't real. Like, and I know, like, money, money isn't real. That sounds like a stupid take, right? Like, no, like I feel that the only way to fix this, the only way to provide solutions to this in a realistic capacity, is to nationalize certain industries, and those industries being the utilities. And that's not even that big of an issue. Like the United States has a 50% surplus of food that just goes to waste. 50% of the food the United States has goes to waste. And that doesn't even take into account the amount of food that's being wasted on animal feed. And that doesn't even take into account how much that's wasted and destroying the environment. So it all feeds into each other. And so when you nationalize and you instead of giving people money, instead of, like, I'm one for reparations in this country, and I'm sure that you guys are probably open to reparations. I don't know what you guys personally believe in that subject, but I think that it's a way to fix the solution is not just with let's give everybody who's low income money, because that might satisfy the Democrats, and that might satisfy the Republicans, but that's not going to satisfy the people who are actually affected by it. That's gonna satisfy their mind, the ruling class's minds. It's not going to satisfy the people. It's not going to change. It's not going to systemically change that. I don't think that using capitalism to change poverty, like there was a literal war on poverty, and that failed. So, like, and then that led into the war on drugs, and that failed. And then that led into the war on terror, and that failed. And now we have a cancel culture, right? It's the next war, whatever. It doesn't matter. What matters is that the systems need to be changed. And it's about making sure that everybody has human rights and can live, and then they'll be able to explore other ways and other avenues outside of just like, I need to find food to survive. I need to pay my electric bill so I can go online. I need to pay my Wi-Fi bill so I can even have access to the internet. I need to pay my phone bill so I can, call people I love. I need to I need to pay for water so I can, drink clean water. And even then, it's not always clean water, especially in Michigan, like you were talking about, Julius. Even in Illinois too, there's not the water outside of Lake Michigan is not the cleanest. And even Lake Michigan's getting poisoned by the capitalist corporations who, instead of spending the extra money to, safely clean up waste, don't spend that money because it's less efficient, and they will release that waste into Lake Michigan, which taints the fish in Lake Michigan, which means that you can't eat the fish in Lake Michigan, which completely destroys an entire industry. And so that is just, it just all feeds into each other. And I think that instead of just like saying that capitalism, the broad, you know, political and economic system is the way to solve, you know, poverty and is in systemic, you know, oppression, to say the least. Like, I really think that it's more nuanced than that. And there are so many ways to combat it without just money.
Well,
How old are you,
sorry,
Joe?
which lake is it again? I just want to make sure I got that.
What?
Which lake again are we talking about? I just want to make sure
Lake
I caught
Michigan?
that.
I was talking about Lake Michigan.
I
the
know,
Great
I know.
Lakes, all the Great Lakes.
I was being sarcastic.
Yeah.
Let me ask you something real quick, Joe, because it's
Go ahead.
very
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
How old are you?
I am 20 years old.
It's amazing, man. It's amazing. I know I don't look it. I got a very pretty face, but I'm 31, right? But when
Mhm.
I was 20, I swear on my life, me and you thought the exact same way. The things that you're saying on this podcast, I probably would have been saying, and I really wasn't even into politics that much back then, but you could almost call me a communist back then. It's just very interesting to hear you. But when you say money, it's not real. Money is real, my man. It's real. It's as real as the flesh and blood in our skin. And let me just ask you one question.
Yeah.
Because it sounds good. Everything you're saying sounds great.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like that's the way it's supposed to be. When has that ever worked?
Well, I can give you a couple of examples, but I'm going to let you know they all end in sorrow because of United States intervention. So here are my examples for you on when nationalizing stuff has worked. It worked in Burkina Faso. Yes, it's a small country in Africa, but Thomas Sankara was effective at nationalizing these institutions, and he raised illiteracy rates. He was very effective at combating poverty. He helped a lot of things in Burkina Faso, and then he was kind of assassinated by a French and CIA team up, and then there was a coup. And then you want to talk about like Venezuela or Cuba or Bolivia or Colombia or Nicaragua or Honduras or Guatemala or, you know, even Mexico. And, you know, then you could talk about China. Like, you could talk about the Soviet Union before Stalin and his terrible genocidal ass came to power. And then you could talk about so many other places. You can talk about the Communist Party of India being one of the main groups that was integral to defeating the British in gaining independence. You can talk about how there are other countries in Africa that have experienced with Pan-African communism and Pan-African unity, but they've all been shot down by the United States and other capitalist countries. And so, you know, I don't know, I'm going to throw a name out there real quick. I'm going to throw out Trotsky's name. And what Trotsky did before he was assassinated in Mexico City was he advocated for a global communist revolution, international communist revolution. And that didn't have to be a violent revolution, but it had to be a revolution that eliminated the ruling class and created a more egalitarian society. And that's something that, you know, as much as I say, you know, like I'm influenced by, you know, all these people from all over the world, you know, which I am, but you know, if there's one thing Trotsky had right, is that it has to be global, because there's always going to be countries like, if you don't think that Russia today would try to stop a communist revolution, like they would. Russia's an oligarchy. Russia's capitalist. If you think China wouldn't try and stop a communist revolution, you're wrong. China's state capitalist. They have billionaires. They have all these things. And if you don't think that North Korea, as oppressive as North Korea is, would try to stop a communist, you know, rise, they would. They hate it. You know, they just care about maintaining power. The ruling class comes in many different forms. And you know, I've heard this a lot, Julius, and this is the last thing I'm going to say. I've heard, oh, you're young. This is your socialism. This is your communism phase, right? You know, it's a phase. I really don't think it is for me, because I do want to go into a career in academia. My focus isn't to make money. That's not my focus in life. I don't need money. I've came to the realization that I don't need to make a ton of money. I don't need to be rich to be happy. And I'm not saying that that's wrong if someone wanted to do that, but I want to learn my life. I want to continue learning until the day I die. That's my passion, and I want to learn about the things I want to learn about. And so when I, hear people say, "Oh, you're 20," when I was your age, I was like you, and now I'm wizened up, and I'm more economically.
I didn't say I wised up.
Yeah, they say you did, but
yeah.
I feel like that's just a realization that in order to better yourself in the capitalist system, you have to start the exploitation yourself. So you have to be on the side of the exploiters in order to be successful. And it depends really on what you value. But that's just how I am. And I don't know. I've got a lot to say on it, but yeah.
There's
Oh, go ahead.
I mean, I there on some level I do agree with you. Like everyone has a right to water, utilities, Wi-Fi, and all that. But there's some problems with it, and the only two problems I'm going to bring up is, first, there's got to be some trade-offs. So if you're going to make it nationally, where the utilities are free and all that, the trade-off is going to be higher tax rate for everybody. Another trade-off is capitalist society. The way the United States, when it was founded, was intended for government to be small, and government has gotten progressively bigger in the United States, and they have too much hand in everything. So my thing with that is, if you make it at the national level, now you're giving the government control of utilities and Wi-Fi, and who's to say if something happens, like you talked about in California, where the governor was threatening to cut off utilities for people that are gathering and all that. So if you give the government, they already have too much power, and you give the government control over all that stuff, then you're going to have a problem, because when you have government or you have people with too much control, they want more. And so I don't think it would work on this level as the government having more control to have control of your Wi-Fi, your utilities. And then you get this stuff where the pandemic happens and you got Governor Newsom over here like, oh, I'm just going to cut off utilities for people that are gathering. So you see people just on this small scale with Governor Newsom. What do you think is going to happen when you get the wrong people in the government doing this? I just don't see it.
Here's my thing for you. This is a very common argument against what I believe in. And here's how I'm going to combat that. Once there has been a revolution, whether it is violent or non-violent, there usually are more. And usually the people are more accustomed and used to dealing with revolution and using revolution as a tactic to get what they want. Because right now, for these Democrats and these Republicans who both believe in the Keynesian economics, which is keep it flat. Keep the curve flat, flatten the curve, right? It's been a talking point during the pandemic. It's been a talking point before the pandemic. They like to keep the curve flat in an economic sense. And what you just advocated for sounds a lot like this guy, Milton Friedman, and how his thoughts on capitalism work. So I see your point. I'm doing some reading on it. You always got to read the other side, right? This guy would kill me if he could, but he's dead, so can't. But one thing I would say is if there's one thing I admire about France, as a country, is that whenever something goes wrong in France that they don't like, they will rise up. They will revolt. It depends on what it is, because they might revolt for something stupid, but and they might not revolt for something very important, like what's going on with them trying to ban Muslim women from wearing the hijab who are under 18. So they might not rise up for that because France is very Islamophobic. But when Governor Newsom in California is like, oh, I'm gonna cut the utilities, that's fucked up. I'm sorry for swearing. That's messed up. A lot of people will probably die. And you know what? In a post-revolution society, the people would probably rise up and take, ideally, there would be no ruling class. And when we talk about communism, when we talk about Marxism, it's all political theory. It all has to be, there's different ways to implement it. In Soviet Union, early Soviet Union, it was Lenin, and it was Marxist-Leninism. In China, it was Marxist-Leninist Maoism. So there are ways to implement it. What Mao did was he did a classicide. He killed the landlord class. Anybody who didn't give up their property was killed. So, you had that choice. And that's the same choice that Milton Friedman gives you. You either get exploited or you die. So that's the choice. And so, the Democrats and the Republicans both don't really care. They're both obsessed with maintaining the ruling class. They're both obsessed with that. And ideally in a post-revolution communist society where things have been nationalized, you wouldn't have a ruling class. And even if it's not a post-revolution society, it's just a social democracy, which is something that me and my brother have conversations a lot because he's a social democrat. He idolizes countries like, Sweden, Finland, Norway. They have nationalized their stuff, and they are a more well-off place, but there's a reason why they're more well off, and that's because they don't accept immigrants, they don't accept refugees, and so at the United States, who has a hand in all of the refugee crises that we see around the world. They have a hand in Syria, they have a hand in Libya, they have a hand in Yemen, they have a hand in Saudi Arabia, they have a hand in Mexico, they have a hand in Guatemala, they have a hand in Honduras, they have a hand in Nicaragua. There's a reason why they're coming to the United States. And that's why I don't personally think that even if you nationalize the systems without a revolution, that can work. I'm sorry I'm giving such a long answer, but I think I have to, because your argument is a very common argument that I see a lot. Because all in all, if a group of people don't like something, I'm sure that you guys can agree. If you guys are, constitutionalists, you love the Constitution. I don't know if you guys are, but like the United States was founded as a slave state in opposition to taxation. It wasn't founded because of in school you're taught it was founded because of religious oppression, and that's why they immigrated. No, they just didn't want to pay taxes, and they didn't want to provide for other people. So I really think that if we take some lessons from the revolutions, like they'll often in schools teach French Revolution history and United States Revolution history hand in hand because they happened similar times. There was two French revolutions. The second one is the one that we, commonly associate with. But, again, I'm sorry for the long answer, but if you see something and a group of people don't see something that they don't like, they should have the opportunity to change that for themselves. It's not representation if you're not actually being represented in your thoughts. And so, yeah, I don't know.
That was a very long answer to a very, very short question, Joa. but it's
Sorry.
fine. It's fine. No, it's all good. I guess my last question here, and then I don't know if Julius or Wyatt had anything else they wanted to ask you, but
yeah, feel free to ask me any questions. I'm seriously down to answer anything, and I promise I won't go as long as I did.
I guess the only thing I was just wondering then is, how do you know with full objection that that there isn't going to be a power grab, after this, so-called revolution happens, right? Is that, if that's something you made mention of, right? When Julius asked about uh, when you guys were comparing the electricity situation, with, in California, right? So I guess I'm just wondering on, like, the revolution happens, everything's beautiful, there's like utopia. How do we know that that's just going to forever flow, like, in that way, I guess?
Well, so one thing I have to say to that,
What's the mindset behind that thought?
I'm not advocating for utopia. Like what I'm advocating for is a realistic approach to the political theory that was written by Marx, Engels, Lenin, Mao, and others, right? And you don't know that. But human nature, a lot of people are like, communism is against human nature. But human nature, I have come to find that I have found is that it's really based on the material around you. It's really dictated by your surroundings and your where you grew up, who you grew up with. Like that will teach you how to live differently. I live differently than you guys, and I think that my human nature is probably different than you guys, and I think that your human nature is different than anybody in the chat right now, and I think that we don't know that someone won't try to power grab. Who tried to power grab? Stalin. And I hate Stalin because Stalin killed a lot of my people. Stalin killed a lot of Jews. And so, Stalin power grabbed, Lenin died, and Stalin, was the next in line because Lenin didn't like Trotsky because they had minor disagreements. And then, Stalin took power. And, regardless of how you feel about Stalin in World War II, I think that there is a chance that there will be a power grab. But one of Marx's famous quotes is around like, the concept that everybody should get what they need. I don't know if that's not to each to his own need or whatever. I don't know the exact quote, but yeah, I think that just like if people are satisfied in their lives, they won't have to grab power. Like, I guess maybe there will be individuals who, aren't satisfied until they have complete power. But a lot of people are just content with living a happy life.
Who stops those individuals from grabbing power? I guess
the Revolutionary Party of the people.
So, okay. So I'm sorry. I'm just trying to map this all in my head now, because now this is, this almost reminds me.
This is highly theoretical.
This almost reminds me of my grad school seminars when we would sit like in these circles and just talk about these kinds of things. Very intellectual, very very theoretical conversations, right, on social theory, on political theory. So then my next question is, does this part, so who decides who's in the social structure? Who decides who gets to put down those kinds of individuals who want that power? Is this a common, like, is this a community effort? Is someone like designated like a leader who then does that? Like how does that power structure, how would that look like?
Dictator, Juan, dictator.
It really depends, but a lot of your dictator and authoritarian states are capitalist, but the communist dictator states do exist. That's not.
I was gonna say, Kim Jong-un, I'm pretty sure, is like the last thing from any form of capitalist. I mean, the country can barely survive on the small electricity grid that they have.
North Korea is just such a peculiar situation. They were really harmed by the Korean War. It's very, very, very interesting what happened there.
They were harmed by the Soviet Union falling too, though, because if you remember, the Soviet Union was giving North Korea, a crap ton of money up until.
And who caused the Soviet Union to fall?
What was
the
that?
United States.
I'm sorry, I missed the first part of your question.
I said, do you know who caused the Soviet Union to fall? The
Oh,
United
well,
States.
absolutely. It was the United States, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, it was the United
So
States and also the effort, the collaborative effort of, Western Europe as well, because a lot of
yeah,
those, those far Eastern Europe and the satellite states, right? What was what was Western Europe doing? They were also, they were spreading capitalist propaganda in the
and
form of
exploiting.
radio, and I think
Yeah.
the main radio station was like Radio Free Europe or something like that. uh
Yeah.
there were a lot of factors. Yeah.
But to answer your question, it really depends on whose ideology you're following. Because what a lot of people hear when they hear communism is, communism, scary, red, Russia, blah, 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 right? But there's so many ideologies. And off the top of my head, I'll name a couple. There's Luxembourg, who believed in democratic communism. There's Trotsky, who believed in global international communist revolution. Lenin believed in the Vanguard Party, which is the party of revolutionaries who would come and represent the working class and the workers, the former working class after a revolution. Then there's Mao, who believed that there should be no private property and killed people for it. And a lot of people, a lot of communists idolize certain folks, and a lot of times their ideologies are problematic. But I really like to think about Latin American and Caribbean communism, because what someone who I particularly like, I don't know how y'all feel about him, but Che Guevara, he did a lot for a lot of countries.
Oh,
And
man.
so
Like,
he
I'm
didn't,
looking at my map. I'm sorry.
yeah, he
There's a
didn't
movie.
just,
There's a movie, The Motorcycle Diaries.
yeah,
It's completely 100% in Spanish, has English subtitles. You want a good movie on Che Guevara in his very, very early days before he was obviously, ultimately killed in Bolivia in
by the
1968
CIA.
by the CIA and Bolivian forces. Uh, Motorcycle Diaries is a good movie.
For sure.
Chronic asthma sufferer. I mean, the guy was literally like getting asthma attacks every few days on that motorcycle. They left. Uh, oh my God, the capital. They left Buenos Aires, Argentina.
Mhm.
Traveled through the continent of South America. I mean,
And inspired people to
Yes.
stop the exploitation that they were facing.
Mhm.
And I think that that's the main thing. Like in Cuba had a lot of problems. Fidel had a lot of problems. And I'm not a Fidel apologist. I'll never be, because he was a dictator. But he did a lot of good for Cuba. Like a lot of people are super scared of authoritarianism. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that authoritarianism is my first course of, my first belief. Like I'm like, but if the people and the people are satisfied and happy and living somewhat utopically, because there will always be issues. If they're living somewhat utopically, does it really matter if it's authoritarian? And that's the question. Like, does the label matter? Does who rules matter if people are happy? And if the general like 90% consensus is happiness? I don't know. It's something I'm still figuring out.
The problem with Marxist, he had some the theory that communism, like it was the way he intended for it, wasn't how all these dictators what they did is when they got into power, unfortunately they turned communism, because the way Marxist wanted it or had it, his theory was, it was a good system, but then you have these dictators that get into power, and then they get more power, and then they oppress their own people. They kill millions of people in their own country. And so you're never going to get, like, throughout history, you have, a communist society. There's always going to be oppressed people. There's always going to be oppressed people in a capitalist society. Now, your thing about the government controlling utilities, Wi-Fi, everyone gets it. I don't think that's going to work on the national level. If you have private companies and they're controlling it or something like that, maybe, and then the government has their hand in it a little bit, but I just don't see it as far as like a national society, as a national, the government controlling that stuff or making it free for everyone. And there's always going to be the trade-off, like you said, like, because when the government has too much power, you see throughout history that, or government or any, you know, dictator, whatever, you see there's going to be problems. I mean, because people in general, if you give them more power, most of the time they're going to use those powers for what?
So
Exactly what we're talking about, Wyatt. Human nature. And that is, in fact, the biggest argument against communism, is that people are not going to change. And the history supports this fact.
But okay, so here's my thing. It's like, how do you, if it doesn't work on a national scale, how do you explain it working before on national scales? But the only reason it didn't work is because of capitalist intervention. Like, I don't get it.
Well, you can get into that argument too, because like, I mean, if you look at history, when the Europeans came over and they forced Christianity on Native Americans or people or the Mayans and said, oh, we need to put them in concentration camps because they're not, you know, I mean, there's a lot of things, like a lot of America does, you know, try to meddle in everybody's business, you know, not, and they did it when the Europeans came across, and now they're trying to meddle in all this stuff. So you're going to see that it's not perfect. America does things because they want to control certain aspects. They want to control oil, or they want to control this, or they want to have their military here in the Middle East. So, I mean, you're going to see that. I mean, it's not going to be perfect. America's not perfect. So that's what, you know, so I mean, throughout history, there's always men that say, well, we need to civilize these Native Americans and the way they are, they're barbaric, and we need to civilize them. So, you know, we're going to force Christianity on them. So you see this throughout history. It's not just, you know, Americans. It's pretty much a lot of countries. Like you see Russia.
Yeah. But like, I'm gonna be honest with you, like that didn't really answer my question. Like I said, if it has worked in the past, and the only reason it doesn't work is because of capitalist involvement, what's to say it won't work?
Did it work in other countries that had control over everything, like a communist society?
Well, there's no communism has never been fully implemented, but
was there people oppressed in those other countries that it worked in? Because I mean,
it depends on how you want to look at depends on how you view oppression. Because in certain countries, yes, the landlord class was oppressed, but that's just because they wanted to continue to exploit people for shelter. So yeah, when people are like, yeah, in Maoist China, yes, I think that you can say that the landlord class was oppressed. But the only reason that it didn't work in China, it didn't fully work in China, is because of U.S. sanctions on China and global capitalism. So that's why, that's why it didn't work. It's not because, you know, there's it's just wrong, it can't work. But it didn't work because of global capitalism and sanctions.
This could be a week-long debate.
Yes,
For
and
sure.
I think this is where we're gonna cap it, because oh man, I could go on and on for this, but
Yeah.
I actually,
Y'all talk about
those-
Che Guevara and stuff. We could talk about
Yes, I could
another
talk Che
5 hours.
I could talk Che Guevara
If
for
y'all
hours
want
on
to
end.
stay with talking with me after the show, we
Well,
can, for sure.
I would love to. However, for those who are in the audience in the live stream who may not know this, but the White Sox are currently up about 6-0 right now in their baseball game, and I'm very happy So I'm gonna actually go watch the baseball game after we get off this podcast, and I'll be very blunt with you guys on that. That's exactly what I'm gonna go do. Joa, drop your Twitter handle for the audience, so that they can
Yes.
follow.
If you guys want to follow Kami, you guys can. You probably won't, but my Twitter is at JROS72. Go for it. I'm so happy that I was able to come on. It was a fun discussion. I'm sorry I talked for 10 minutes at a time. I can do that. One time I was tasked to do a 10-minute presentation and I took 20 minutes. So,
I am so happy, and I'm so glad that I was able, we were able to touch base again. Joa, I know, like I said, it's been a year, and it's always, I always enjoy talking with you. We may not see eye to eye on, a lot of the issues of course that are kind of, impacting us, but it's always.
Can I say one more thing? Juan?
Sure, go ahead.
Sorry, Julius. I just want to say, I'm still learning, guys, and I'm still growing in my knowledge. And I'm not going to say that I'm ever going to go back on what I think right now, but I challenge y'all to learn with me. And that's my thing. Like don't go pick up a copy of the Communist Manifesto. Like that's crap. You don't need to read that to understand communism and oppression and stupid stuff like that. I would just challenge y'all to just think and to maybe pick up a book. I can recommend some books if y'all want, but that's my thing. Just
the North Korean Constitution, the Chinese Constitution.
No.
Hey, real quick, I just want to thank Joa personally for coming on. I think we had a very, very great conversation. I don't usually get to talk with communists on a daily basis, and I punch air a lot on Twitter, just like you do, just in a different direction. So I really enjoyed you coming on, and I universally agree on the learning on the quest to continue learning. Like it only helps everybody. It's nothing negative about it. Thank you for coming on, Joel.
I appreciate it, man. It was nice to meet you. Nice to talk with you. I'm
gonna give you a follow too, and if you want to follow me, that's fine. But if you unfollow me in a day, I do understand.
Joe's gonna go looking for a safe place an hour after following you, Julius. It's gonna be comical.
Hey, guess what? The Tigers are up 6-0 right now at the same time as the White Sox. It's so weird, isn't it?
No one cares about any of the trade.
The Tigers are winning again.
Yeah, they're about to sweep the Astros. It's so crazy.
Okay. I take that back. If it's against the Astros, then
AJ Hinch had to get revenge on his old cheating team. So
I'm an Astros fan. So.
But, oh man, it's rough. It's rough.
Yeah.
At least y'all got that World Series a few years ago. They didn't take it.
Yeah.
You can follow. You can follow the guys Julius at the Fifth Top and Wyatt at the Cornelius 7. I am at Bears Fanatic 94. I'm sorry, guys.
Composure, Juan.
We'll be back next Wednesday night. To not talk communism, but we have another special guest coming on.
Unfortunate.
I know, right? No. Actually, I think our next episode's on Sunday night, if I'm not mistaken, this week. If I'm thinking my mental calendar, we have a special guest coming on tentatively on Sunday night, ladies and gentlemen, who is a prominent radio broadcaster down in Chicago. Not gonna reveal who that is just yet, but it is someone, it's someone who I have listened to throughout the years, a highly respected news anchor for a very large radio station in Chicago that can be heard throughout multiple states in the Midwest. So be dropping that that hint later on this week. But in the meantime, gentlemen, thank you. Joa, thank you. It was a good conversation, and I look forward to our next episode in a few days. So good night, everyone.
Go Lions.
And go Black and go Bears.
Good night, America.
Go Tigers. America.
We're still live. Do you want to stay live?
No,